Today with Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
But I do have some questions.
There are more questions than answers.
Radio Command, talk today.
If you're ready to talk, we're willing to listen.
Well, I really enjoy this program today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
May God bless every person.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome, and thank you so much for joining us here on this, what I believe is Wednesday, and if it is always a wonderful, somewhat windy Wednesday. Let's start things off with some open line. 12:30, we had a chance to talk to our friends at government. As you know, the new work is coming into play. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today, the Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program. We ask our listeners to avoid statements or comments which are abusive, derogatory, malicious, or defamatory. Do not use any indecent language or make any statement which is false or misleading. Email talktoday@candw.ky or call 1-800-534-8255.
Courtesy of Flow.
Cayman's #1 network that connects you to your world like never before.
Let your voice be heard. Once again, here's your host, Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. Thank you for joining us. Let's start things off with some open line. 12:30, get a chance to have you share with us as we talk about, is it the merger? It's the evolution? Not necessarily. I want to say it in another way. Because as we move forward to an improved democracy, as our people start to actively engage and participate and not only expect more from our government, but equally be positioned to contribute even better, and as the country's resources are deployed in such a way to make the people, the citizens, even benefit more, well, you have to be active, engaged, informed participants. Hey, 949-8037, 949-8037. Or if you choose, you can give us a call on our toll-free line, 1-800-534-8255. And likewise, we have a WhatsApp, 925-3261. And then always an option to send an email. talktoday@candw.ky. Interestingly, I had a chance to chat with a number of people earlier, and it was good because simply we have a wide and varied cross-section of people making a presentation in light of some of the changes that are expected to come down the pipeline, presumably at some point, to include potentially within government, possibly, as one fellow speculated, maybe we'll see it within, this is just his speculation, within the governance platform. He said, first and foremost, if we look at the Cayman context, touted as, one of the leading offshore financial centers, and yet banking internally within the jurisdiction sometimes seems challenging. You can do a transaction from a Cayman-based financial entity to any of the established, organizations globally, in rather seamless, rather quick, time frame. But sometimes from bank, customer A to bank customer B, it seems to be days or at least, much longer. Opening up accounts, much has been said about the challenges. Not that we shouldn't have due diligence and proper vetting of all the customers, but simply some of the things that some people have experienced. The notion that if you have a complaint or a question or some query, can you go to any regulatory agency to say, well, listen, this doesn't seem right. Maybe the fees should be assessed and reviewed, more readily, more frequently. Perhaps there should be some more teeth in enforcement. But he shares, even within just leveraging technologies, can you do transactions not just more cheaply, but more efficiently? Now, with that in mind, one student said, if you take the technologies, let's just use email, fellow says he loves email. Great way if you properly archive and keep a proper record, whether it's a running tally of the correspondence in relation to that particular subject. Easier to sort of trace that chain of, and have the proper record of what transpired, because everybody's contributing. When you get on to other platforms where perhaps akin to some sort of group-like setting and people are commenting, well, it may become more challenging. The younger student was of the view, well, that's the way that we go. Everybody can weigh in when they have to edit a document or contribute to some developing storyline or some project. They all can actively engage almost simultaneously. Now, where are we with leveraging that technology? And as was evident, where are we as a people in embracing it? And how did that move us forward? Now, the fellow said, if we look at Cayman and as we were developing our infrastructure, how much of it should we, put online so that the maintenance and management and administration is much easier? Perhaps roads could be those smart highways that not only help to navigate but inform. Drivers are able to inform of potential accidents or other things that may impede or slow down traffic. Perhaps the authorities can deploy strategies that would help not just make the roads safer, but perhaps when necessary, apprehend or ticket or do other things to ensure that we are compliant with our legislation. So enforcement of perhaps speeding tickets and traffic offences, perhaps expired license decals and the like, especially now that we have these new license plates. And with that, the student shared, well, is that part of the thing that we're doing it incremental, so we become perhaps more, accepting of it because it just becomes commonplace. It isn't all one time, and people no longer have a sense of, well, it was just sprung on us, so they become accepting of it. Now, beyond that, they shared, when we put in online banking or financial information or medical information so that it can be shared, security protocols in place, but it can be shared across physicians, not just within the jurisdiction, but if you're overseas, perhaps on a referral, perhaps because of an emergency, you're traveling, vacation, business, or otherwise. The fellow says, give an example. Had a very, very simple experience. Had to go to a physician for something. While talking to her, made reference to something else. The physician was able to call up and verbally not only get approval, but get access to the documentation, the scans, the x-rays, whatever it was that needed in order to consult with the patient on this other thing. He thought, how efficient and effective that is. Two physicians can be consulting, they're miles apart and talking to each other, looking at the same document and giving the patient the needed advice and direction relative to, a proposed treatment. And he was sharing, could Cayman, as we develop, could we be looking at leveraging our technology so that the people benefit more? With that, he shared, going into our homes, the whole idea that perhaps we have significant, a high percentage of our homes with internet access, but how efficient and how reliable, how fast is the service? And equally important, and perhaps maybe more so, how is it being used? Is it just to online game? Is it just to watch videos and other stuff? Or is it being used to educate, to inform, to become more than just consumers, but perhaps to develop, perhaps in partnership with others, whether there's some other application or game platform even? And they shared that we're probably not doing enough of that. Our electronic devices, he said, are probably just there to entertain and nothing more. Now, if that's the case, is that something that we can and should be, addressing so that our people are not just these mindless numbers moving about aimlessly without any meaningful purpose, but that we are leveraging the technology, the technology has been properly deployed with a view that we have not just access but fast, reliable access to the devices, to the platforms, to the things we need to make business more productive, but to make those who have that desire to explore the creative side to be able to collaborate, whether within the jurisdiction or perhaps in many different time zones away. Now, perhaps that's not something that is that important to you. Perhaps it is. Perhaps it's something that you've seen and you've been in as a result of your own interests. Maybe you've bought the best data plan that there is out there. Maybe you've found another way to ensure that your internet connectivity is as high as it can be here. But perhaps when you go to other places, other jurisdictions, you realize that the fastest that you have here is not that fast compared to wherever that is that you are. If that is the case, when we're talking to our politicians and policymakers, to the technocrats and the like, is there a way that we can get better, not necessarily paying significantly more, but perhaps leveraging what we have so that it all accrues to most of us in a much more accessible, perhaps cost-effective way. Well, those are the things that were shared with us earlier. I thought it was interesting to see how some people have been thinking about things and wondering to what extent having this available to our people could not just improve our productivity or creativity, but perhaps encourage more of our people to look at what is available to us and expand their horizons. Not just look at the fun and games that can be had with our devices, but perhaps instead look at those devices as a way to make money, to create, to add value. 8949-8037, 1-800-534-8255. We're going to gladly get into our next segment. We're hoping to have a very, not just enlightening, engaged, informed, interactive discussion. And we hope that you'll participate. So please stay tuned for Talk Today.
What do rising geopolitical tensions mean for Cayman? How will the healthcare industry change with the emergence of a genetic revolution? With nationalism growing globally, magnified by Brexit and the U.S. Republican agenda, what are the implications for Cayman? The Cayman Economic Outlook Conference 2019 will answer these and other questions as it explores the theme, Dynamic New World, Braving the Turmoil. Be a part of the discussion on February 28th at the Kimpton Seafire Resort. Reserve your spot today and take advantage of the early bird rates. Sign up at rfceo.ky. rfceo.ky.
It's 2019, and you know what they say, new year, new me.
Yeah, Bobo. For me, it's new year, new car.
For real? What you thinking of buying?
The new RAV4 from Vant Motors. It's one of the safest compact SUVs out there with enough room inside, which is good for my family and convincing my wife we need this. Plus, it's fuel efficient, fun to drive, and on top of that, it's on sale too.
Yeah, and I hear it's one of the best-selling SUVs on the market.
Cause you don't gotta spend more to do more. That's why I'm gonna get mine now, while they have a new stock to select from.
Do more in your RAV4. Save thousands on the all-new 2019 RAV4. Test drive yours today and see why the RAV4 is a best-selling SUV in Cayman. Available only at Vant Motors, Walkers Road.
Hello, I am Noel March, a small business owner in Georgetown for over 20 years. Small businesses depend on government to develop a quality infrastructure and environment that encourages entrepreneurs to create and grow local businesses, resulting in the creation of jobs and prosperity for Caymanians. Small businesses help drive our economy. Just as we have supported building the new airport, we must support the building of the new cargo and cruise port. It will give our tourism industry the opportunity to grow and Caymanian entrepreneurs the chance to shine. Support the port. Support our tourism.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back to Talk Today. Thank you so much for joining us as we invite you to be a part of our discussion. 949-8037, 1-800-534-8255. And, if you wish to get into it, at the outset, maybe a little bit early, set the stage. Well, go right ahead. Shortly, we're going to have our scheduled discussion and invite you to be a part of that. But sometimes, as they say, the whole notion of being an informed participant is not just making yourself available, first and foremost, but when the opportunity presents, be willing to engage. And as we were sharing just before the break, the idea that we look at the Cayman context, relatively speaking, it's a small place. Now, traveling from one part of the island to the next, especially in the mornings coming into work or school or what have you, if you're coming from the eastern districts, or in the evenings, you have to go back home or to some activity outside of your working environment, you may find a traffic congestion and the delays that come with it. Now, with that in mind, could we, as was shared this morning, could we be doing more to make the use of people's time that much more useful? Fellow said if you were to do a simple math and you said, okay, you were in traffic for so many minutes every day, you translate that over so many weeks and months of the year, how much time is that? And in that sense, if it equates to days or weeks, is that lost time? Could that be more productive? If you could, would you be more productive? He shared that he recalls once having had a chance to be seconded overseas, and he thought the experience was good and bad and took a while to get acclimated, but you spent a lot of time getting from one point to the next, and sometimes just sitting there in the cab of the transport vehicle, as he puts it. Eventually you start to realize, well, you can read a few books, you can maybe engage in conversation with people, you can prepare for that presentation that is coming up, you could study, and you would notice that people were doing all those things. But how much of it really allowed you to benefit from what seemed to have been this extra time, as opposed to you having to drive yourself and the like? And would that mean anything for us? Well, we have our guests assembled. Ms. Susan, what should we do? Just make life easy for everybody else so we can have an engaged conversation. When we come back, we got a chance to share with you, and we invite you to be a part of our discussion. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
From happy beginnings to happy ever after,
Brit K protects your lifestyle with the best insurance cover at the best possible price.
Health insurance with far-reaching benefits.
95% of claims settled in 5 days.
Low-cost life insurance.
And investments.
Security in retirement.
With a custodian pension plan.
For happy beginnings and a happy ever after,
visit BritK.ky or call 949-8699.
Brit K, where people come first.
Did you know that recycling collection containers are located island-wide on Grand Cayman? The Department of Environmental Health's program is an integral part of DEH's waste management responsibility in the Cayman Islands. Start your recycling program at home today. Put your Type 1 and 2 plastics in appropriate DEH recycling containers at all Foster's supermarkets, Kirk Market, or Hurley's Grand Harbor. Please keep the Cayman Islands clean. Reduce, reuse, and recycle. For more information about recycling, go to www.deh.gov.ky.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back to Talk Today. Thank you so much for joining us, and it truly is an honor to sit here in this chair and don't just be able to hopefully offer up an avenue to facilitate an engaged discussion, but equally important to allow us as a populace to be not only adequately but timely informed. With great respect to our good friend Mr. Wesley Howell, we say ladies first, and the wonderful company of Ms. Sharon Rolston joins us.
Good afternoon.
All right. Mr. Howell, I think you'd agree with me, sir, that whenever we get a chance to see the stalwarts in our community shine and a society that respects and celebrates its people and its women and their accomplishments, and as they take up the mantle and continue the tradition of, those seafaring wives who were, for the most part, the keepers, the makers, the shakers, and all of the good things that made our society what it was. Well, we can look and say it's going to be a bright, beautiful, wonderful future, right?
Absolutely.
All right.
Flattery, boy.
Thank you so much for having us here today.
Boy, you imagine how best we are. But I'm glad to see that as a people we look to the future, and we may have our differences of opinion. Some of us still believe that the German Bundesliga is the best football league. Although us will probably talk about the Premier League too. I'm sorry, but even in disagreeing which football league is the best, we say football is the best sport, unless of course you prefer basketball or swimming or some other thing.
Football is the best sport.
See, amongst friends we can agree.
You're going to start on a whole other set of call-ins, not talking about
sport. I say that to recognize that at the end of the day, whatever we do, if we do it together in love, with a genuine spirit of cooperation and unity, will bring about not just success, but a sense of, enjoyment. And to see the evolving, I don't want to say merger, perhaps reinvention. We think back to the early 90s of reinventing government.
Yes. Well, the Premier said radical change, and so that's really what it is. Certainly for work. I think customs and the CBC merger with immigration is a merger, so it's a little different. But for work, it is radically different because we're taking two departments that exist currently and dismantling them basically right down to the nuts and bolts and building something new. So it's exciting and it's challenging, but I think that ultimately the public will benefit substantially, and so will our staff, because we're taking away a lot of the laborious manual processes and making them more efficient. So happy staff means better customer service and happier public ultimately. So that's the goal.
Well, more efficient, effective use of scarce resources.
That's correct. Yes.
The benefit of having economics as a mainstay within our education system. So the Honourable Education Minister will put that in place. But the Honourable Opposition Leader in sharing sentiments about Honourable Premier, I thought it was not only timely but very complimentary in that his presentation publicly, not just his eloquence and intellect, but the notion of how he presented. And to see the Honourable Premier speaking and using words like radical, I like that, because speaking to my pastor way back when, go back to the root of the word radical and what it meant in that ethos back then. It's a powerful word. It's a wonderful word, because we want to change things in a way. And now breaking things down, we look at companies not that long ago that were re-engineering and retooling. They were doing things because they needed to fundamentally change the way they were doing things. If not, they wouldn't survive. There wouldn't be any employment. There wouldn't be any growth in the economy. There wouldn't be any profit for shareholders. No need. And now we have it within government. So radical change.
If you just use the word change, because I even sometimes find myself falling back and thinking, no, he said radical and he means radical. So I think the public has an expectation that they will see something that's different, not just change for change's sake, but it will be a different way of doing business. And so that is radical compared to however 30 plus years, maybe 40 years of immigration, just more evolving from from the start, never really changing to adapt to the the economic and social changes that were going on very rapidly. And so rather than try to untangle that mess that had been created from not keeping up, I think it was very visionary, and a lot of that respect and credit goes to Mr. Howell for saying to the Premier, we can change the name, but if you really want something different, then we have to pull it all out by the roots and shake out the dirt and start from scratch. And so that's the radical change that people are going to see. It's a completely new way of doing business.
Yeah, it's encouraging, and not just for people like me. I mean, when you're not that tall sometimes, when the little fellow who was waiting to see Jesus come by, he had to get a sycamore tree to go into. You find ways to not necessarily overcome your obstacles, but to make sure that you position yourself, right? got a chance to coach basketball a long time ago. I thought it was obviously because I was so tall and a skilled basketball player, right? Know nothing about the sport, but knowing a little bit about football. If you approach things with desire, genuine passion and love, you may bring something to the table that brings about a change in approach. I didn't know that you weren't supposed to guard the other team even if they didn't have the ball. That became a press. Oh, that's the way you did. So radical approach to things could just be an improved way. Mr. Howell, I'm excited to hear about these radical changes.
Well, they're not coming yet. They're in the works.
I was about to talk about the way forward. So we actually just came from a joint staff meeting with existing staff members from Customs, Immigration, NWDA. We even had some representatives from Cayman Brac over as well, representing the Sister Islands, and it was a very positive experience to have high energy going into what is a fairly significant change process. Most people hear change and they get nervous. They hear radical change, they get very nervous. But the staff members have been fantastic, delivering great customer service throughout all the planning and changes that have been implemented thus far, and those that are coming. So for the businesses and other customers out there who are hearing radical at this point but hadn't actually seen it in the legislation, just want to make the point that the initial stage of the legislation as we have now, I mean, in its very title, the Immigration Transition Bill, this is a bill entitled A Transition from Immigration Towards Work. So it is more of a structural sort of housekeeping exercise to reflect the correct names of persons with authority and those things. There's a couple of tweaks in there in terms of policy changes, but for the most part, this is decoupling the almost 200 pages of immigration regulation and primary legislation, aligning what was border control, deportations, and asylum with the customs law to create the customs and border control law, and then the aspects that dealt with work permits, Cayman status and permanent residency, to have those then in this immigration transition bill, similar for the regs to reflect that, and then things like the chief immigration officer is replaced by the director for work, and the collector of customs is replaced by the director of customs and border control. So there's significant amount of work that the drafters did to ensure that we could separate, and the bits of the business that need to continue under the separate umbrellas was done. So for February 1st, which is this Friday, our analogy that we're painting for individuals is we've been planning for the last 9 months in earnest, and we're actually giving birth on Friday to the new entities, and we will continue to work as we go forward, and as they grow. We'll have some teething issues and some other things, but we remain steadfast in the fact that we are building this for a better Cayman, and we're delivering on the mission of full Cayman employment, responsiveness to the businesses that are necessary to make Cayman competitive, and in the case of customs and border control, a truly intelligence-led, risk-based approach to passenger and cargo that ensures that we're protecting our borders and protecting the revenue of the government all in one go. So staff are excited. Some are wearing their new uniforms today, and it was a really good way to spend a Wednesday morning.
It was.
Listen, Wednesday's a good day. Friday's even better. If I may ask, and as we go through this, and for me, it isn't. Some people don't like change, and yet they're quick to tout. And I don't say this to be disrespectful in any way. They say, "Oh, but change is the one constant." But change is good. Even if you were gaining weight, is that because you're putting on muscle, or is it because you really, in your mind, enjoying life and you're expanding, like the prayer of Jabez, you're expanding your territory. Now, change that's managed is even better. From that perspective, the name changes. The collector of customs become the director of customs border control, the chief immigration officer. Will those, for instance, the chief immigration officer, will that title remain going down the road, like how we have the financial secretary, still the financial secretary, but we have the minister of response? So more than just name changes.
Yeah. To rewind a bit, so Mr. Clifford wasn't, just appointed as it was an open recruitment exercise that, he was competitive in and was our candidate of choice going forward. So he was essentially promoted into that role in relation to Ms. Rolstone. Again, an open recruitment exercise for which he was successful, and moving forward for that. Internally, CBC is more of a merger, so for everybody that was customs and immigration working on those, we have a space for them. Within work, the radical change has actually changed our chart significantly because we've changed the business processes significantly. So we're going through this process of, expressions of interest in some cases where we can't find the skills in-house, then, internal recruitment, external recruitment. But we are, actually reshaping what that department looks like, and how we're able to then better keep up with what the demands are for upskilling our Caymanians, making sure they have a fair shot at job opportunities, and that they have, if they're underemployed as well as unemployed, we're there to advocate for them and to give them exposure to what the opportunities are, including retraining as well, and internships and those things. So really excited about that aspect coming into that traditional work permit decision making in a more integrated way. I think we did it in the past, but those two agencies were in different departments and didn't work quite as tightly together. Now with the NWDA sort of ceasing to exist at midnight on Thursday night, that joined up approach, I think will be much better for us to be able to deliver on our mission for Caymanian employment.
So from the NWDA's perspective, in NEEM, the agency and entity wouldn't exist, but the functioning, the ethos of what it was supposed to be would be merged, and the intent of what it should be doing would still exist.
I know it's a bit of a confusion right now because the real rush to get us to this point was so that CBC, the law was separated and those functions went with Customs and Border Control. This was never really a milestone for work. Our milestones were going to come later this year. But it is what it is, so we're just working through the confusion. But business processes as they are currently will remain, beyond Friday. They will continue on until work's own legislation comes into effect again later on in the year. And when we formally open our doors is when the radical change will occur. But for present purposes, the functions that exist today will exist where they are currently. And so that goes for the NWDA and for traditional immigration services such as work permit, Cayman status and permanent residency applications, English language tests. Help me out, boss. Some of the traditional functions that exist today will continue to exist at the traditional place at headquarters for immigration, and NWDA at Midtown Plaza. Now, ultimately, we will move. I don't want to say where yet and when because it's all a work in progress. But so this is a transition, as the law says. It's a transition to transfer the powers of the CIO to me as interim director, and the functions that were immigration related, border control aspects, enforcement and asylum, to Mr. Clifford. So it's as clear as mud, probably. It's kind of unfortunate, but it's just change, like you say, and people will adapt and they will get accustomed to it. But really, nothing is going to change very much that's visible to the public from current.
So on the traditional NWDA side, we've been successful in hiring Ms. Catherine Whitaker to come in as our head of labour supply and demand aspects. So one of the first things that she started doing was going through the programs and initiatives that were previously offered by the NWDA, sort of assessing their effectiveness and their ability to deliver on our mission. And it's coming forward already with recommendations as to some key performance measurements that we need to put in place so that we can actually report to the public how well we're doing with the funding that they've entrusted us with, and also the fact that we need to ensure that what programs we're offering is the right programs for this season in relation to where we are with what types of jobs are being are coming online, what folks ought to be trained and retrained for, and how we match those that are able and willing to work with the opportunities out there for work to happen. So really excited about that happening. And so across the board we have these very skilled, experienced persons coming through and then able to deliver on very tasked, very specific areas of improvement that we know is one of the things that we have to get right in order to deliver on the overall mission.
From the business perspective, in the business community, they're going to be asking for work permits, for instance, and they've identified someone. Let's just assume that they've gone through a seriously open, fair, very objective process. They've advertised properly everywhere, and viewed and say, this applicant from some other jurisdiction is the right fit. They have a process now that they're accustomed to, paperwork, all the requisite, documentation. Will that, on the face of it, change?
Mm-hmm.
And if so, how?
Well, that's the radical change that's going to come. It won't happen right away. So, like I said before, the usual practices will continue to exist until we get work legislation, the substantive legislation in place. But so everything will remain the same for now. But as we go along, because there's so many balls in the air. Ideally, when we were looking at whether or not to use the same forms or change the forms, we thought we're going to a paperless system where we'll have no forms. So let's not focus on changing forms now. We'll have to endure the pains of the current processes. But where we can make those processes more efficient, we will as we go along. So, for example, things that we might ask for now, we're going to form a subcommittee soon. That's on my list of things to do. To go through the forms and say what can we do without, starting now.
That won't impact our ability to make a decision,
right.
But that these are things that may be less relevant now or been superseded by something else. So in some cases, some of our forms are 12, 15 pages long.
Just for renewal even.
Yeah, so there are some gains there. But also looking forward on the labor side of things. So you talked about, persons advertising. Our future state for that is that the National Job Clearinghouse will literally become that. So the law will mandate you to be on the National Job Clearinghouse as a person seeking employment. So our hope is that when you do that, you'll find a Cayman who is ready and willing and able to work, and that will be the end of your process. You go with the resource that you need. Now, if you can't find a Cayman who is ready and willing and able to work, then we would consider looking at whatever application you have for a work permit. But that is sort of the radical change that's happening. So it doesn't start when businesses have already gone out and selected someone and it's essentially fighting for that position. We really want to be in a position where we are predicting, sort of estimating where the growth is going to be within the job market, prepare people for that. So when employers are looking for specific talent, we have a pool of Caymanians who have been trained, retrained, upskilled, that are able to take on those positions. That's the radical bit about it. But before people get really nervous about the radical bit, come Friday, the 1st, we still maintain the same forms. You still do that through the same places. Be that you clearing cargo with customs, you coming through the controls at the airport, you're doing a visa application, or you're doing a work permit or CSPR application. Those forms continue. Those payments are being made in the same places. So from that aspect, Friday would be smooth from the customer perspective.
Yeah. From the perspective of the timing of this, with the greatest respect, is this more of a policy and perhaps driven by the political directorate, the politicians, as to when the new legislation and the new things will take effect? If I understand, there was a press release sometime back that said it will delay, and we alluded to it earlier, when this will come in. So applications for work permits, it'll be in the same process until such time as the transition. So is this one, politically driven, and then two, next month, next year, 10 years? I'm trying to be...
It's political in the fact that what we're delivering is policy initiatives from the government. So the Premier, who is the minister responsible for these agencies now, and the Cabinet have said, here's what we want you to deliver. That was then followed up with allocation of budget and resources to make it happen. The slight delay that we had was the effective date for CBC coming online. So that was either January 1st, as we were initially going for New Year's Day, or as it is now, February 1st. Now, in hindsight, I'm really thankful that we had additional month to help prepare and fine-tune some things. But we are, excited about the opportunities to move ahead. And while the timeline is driven by get it done as soon as possible, we also wanted to make sure that we took the time to get it as right as we can in relation to engaging our staff members and stakeholders and what works, what doesn't work, what can we tweak, what can we change, what can we ask for, what can we stop asking for. So the level of engagement thus far has been absolutely tremendous. I think we've met with just about every representative group, from Small Business Association, HR Society, CETA, Chamber of Commerce. So wide consultation thus far. And as we get towards sort of getting the policy recommendations ready to go forward, that stakeholder engagement again will kick in. Average person on the street, person employing, one helper in the home, small business person with 1 or 2 employees, they're all absolutely important as we go forward.
Now, from that perspective, as we, I say we, but in this case it's we in the singular I, trying to understand the process, to be able to appreciate things that are being said publicly, either as callers or in other comments, and having an opportunity to listen to some individuals. A concern was expressed. I did not have an answer with respect. If I try to ask you as the best I understand it. With the impending sort of full implementation relative to work permits, temporary or otherwise, and came as status and permanent residency, some expressed concern, well, until we get to that point, in this interim period, some people could, move through much easier and much faster than had the full legislation come on board. Is that a concern? Is there a merit to that? Does that make even in a sense at all, Mr. Howell?
I really don't think so.
Okay. I don't either.
Okay.
Because work legislation, was never intended to be coming into effect. Now, we always had it in the first quarter of this year. So.
Yeah, and the systems that we're building, the people that we're putting into place, so Mr. Jeremy Scott being promoted to Deputy Director for Compliance and Enforcement. He has a team that he's bolstering now with additional members that are going to be even more stringent on compliance and enforcing the work permit laws as they have been in the past. The fact that CBC is dealing with overstayers and that sort of thing, we will have our guys working side by side together, so they may have different uniforms on, but their mission to enforce the law is the same. One of the things that I would stress with individuals in terms of delivering legislation is one of those things that we really must take our time to get it as right as possible. There's nothing that bites in the back more than sort of the law of unintended consequences when you think you're closing down one loophole but you open up 2 more, right? So we're really taking our time to try and get that right. At the same time, we're also aligning our business processes with what the legislation looks like. So it's sort of a two-way approach where there's some high-level policy things that we must get in, but we also then have some operational things that we think will work and help us to enforce. But yeah, there is no lull. Actually, if I was to give you an example as to how customer service and enforcement go hand in hand. So at the airport, Customs has introduced the green channel. So if you have nothing to declare, you don't have to fill out a form. You simply walk down the green channel. You'll be met by an officer called a rover who's not standing behind a counter. They're going to interact with you. If they think you need to go for some additional checks, they'll send you there. If not, you're on your way and you're out the door. So when we introduced that, there was a fear that the revenue collected at the airport would go down. The opposite actually happened. It's gone up. So we have better customer service because people are happy they don't have to wait in line. And our people that are being honest and paying, because the penalties are quite significant, right? Have also gone up in terms of the revenue. Similar on the immigration side, our hopper and terminals at the airport are upwards of 90% customer satisfaction. So 9 out of 10 persons that come through the airport are happy with the service that they're getting. But we've arrested more people and refused more people entry last year than we have. By June of last year, we had exceeded all we had in 2017. Right. So for us, we're delivering on the mission for keeping our border secure with good customer service. The two are not mutually exclusive. Right. And the same for work as well. So while we continue to work on the future state things, the lights are still on, we're still delivering good customer service, and we're still enforcing the law.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, when we come back, we'll continue our discussion. I'm going to pause, take our news break. I think Miss Susan either has some coconut water. We'll see what she brings, right? So please, stay tuned for Talk Today.
Excellent.
From district to district, moving through the waters to Cayman Brac and Little Cayman. Your station, your voice. All things Cayman. One radio, many people. This is home.
Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.
Radio Cayman. Radio Cayman's newsroom. These are the biggest stories right now.
With your latest updates, I'm Shanda Gallego. It's been more than a week since police began their search for missing 72-year-old Errol Keith Whiteley. Police say so far they found clothing thought to belong to Mr. Whiteley in an abandoned car. They have received reports of sightings of him, but have not been able to locate him. Mr. Whiteley is thought to have fallen on hard times, lost his shelter, and is now living in the outdoors. Last week, Friday, police searched several acres of swampy mangrove lands in the Washington Boulevard area of Georgetown, but were not able to locate him. He is 5 feet 11 inches tall, of dark complexion. He is not thought to be dangerous, and anyone who sees him is encouraged to contact the Georgetown Police Station at 949-4222. In news elsewhere, the surprise arrival of a giant Russian passenger plane to Venezuela amid a wave of anti-government unrest is fueling intrigue on social media and charges by the opposition that President Nicolas Maduro's administration is looking to shuttle abroad what's left of the country's depleted gold reserves. The Boeing 777 plane, with a capacity of 400 passengers, belongs to Russia's Nordwind Airlines and arrived Monday night. A Nordwind representative confirmed the plane's arrival but wouldn't comment on who chartered the plane, what it is carrying, or its itinerary. Leaders across the European Union offered a united chorus of no on Wednesday to Britain's belated bid to negotiate changes to the Brexit divorce deal so Prime Minister Theresa May can win the backing of her parliament. In London, May acknowledged that her government hasn't decided exactly how it will try to change the deal to address British lawmakers' concerns about the Irish border. All this while Britain is headed for the EU exit in less than 2 months on March 29th. Those are your latest updates here on Radio Cayman. I'm Shanda Gallego.
Radio Cayman, the voice of the Cayman Islands.
What's happening in your community? News and information, music and more. You can find us. www.radiocayman.gov.ky. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Radio Cayman is your choice, your voice for today's biggest news. Radio Cayman.
A caring and community spirit, cherished family and cultural values. These are some of the things that still embodies the Caymanian way of life in the Eastern Districts today. Savannah Pharmacy, your neighborhood pharmacy, located in Countryside Shopping Village, is delighted to offer products and services of real value. Whether it's catering to your family's medical needs or carrying apparel, gifts, and beauty products, Savannah Pharmacy provides you with more than just prescriptions. Remember, they're always just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours, including Sundays and holidays. Savannah Pharmacy. For more information, call 946-3336.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waging to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us. And, I'm truly honored, but perhaps I'm not being as, publicly respectful as I think I should be. We have Chief Officer, Mr. Wesley Howell. I won't say, lady Sharon Rolston, but perhaps I should, because she is a remarkable lady. Is that okay to share with Sharon? Interim director or director now? How do I?
I'm still in the interim. I'm still the interim director. Okay. Yes, that's a specific title and for a reason.
As you look
nothing sinister about it at all.
Immigration. Ooh, immigration transition, but nothing sinister about that either. No, but I hope that there are people, and then I think for the most part, and if I say this and I get caught out, and because you're honest and trusting, people take advantage of, well, you know what, it happened. But most of us, I think, are honest, law-abiding people who want to comply, not because we're minions, but because we believe that's the way a civilized society is to work. You travel, hopefully, in the same direction on the road, because that's the direction that that road takes you. The vehicle that's going the opposite direction probably going to stand out. Everybody going in the same direction. And that's how we work. And I'm glad to see these things and hopefully this discussion. Mr. Howell, from that perspective, as we look at February the 1st, significant historical day, perhaps in our thing. We had a question in our discussion early this morning. So I've got some people who say, you're West Bay, you can still learn. So they're trying with me, and I'm still paying attention. And we were talking about some of this legislation, leveraging technology and different things, and trying to give me a perspective as they see it. In the U.S., is it Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, I think is what it was. Is this and that somewhat similar in terms of our CBC and ICE?
So one of the benefits that you have for not going first is that you learn from other people's mistakes. Mm-hmm. So in talking to our colleagues, and we've worked very closely with the chief, so the person responsible for Miami Airport, which is one of the busier airports and number one for cargo in the U.S. So they have a fairly heavy contingent of Customs and Border Protection officers. So I say all that to say one of their lessons learned was when they separated the frontline officers from the enforcement and investigators, which is ICE. So CBP does cargo and persons, and then ICE does the investigations on anything that pops up from them. They found a bit of a disconnect when they handed over from one agency to the next. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that we've built is that even within work and also within CBC, we have investigators with arresting powers and powers to go through administrative fines and take people through prosecution in both organizations. So we don't drop the ball at any point. Now, will they always work alone in their departments? Absolutely not. We're joined up in that approach that they'll operate side by side, along with officers from Department of Labor and Pensions as well, because they also do some law enforcement. Mm-hmm. And practice has shown that if somebody is jipping the system on one thing, we probably can catch them doing some other things at the same time. So they may be actually looking at multiple concurrent investigations coming through. But no, we're all joined up, not like the U.S. where it's all one for us.
And now from just to try to understand how certain things you take best practices from the UK's perspective, HMRC relative to their revenue collection, and then our customs function. Similarities.
Again, having spoken to our colleagues at UK Border Force, one of their challenges is to balance sort of the two aspects of policy coming out of the Treasury in relation to reporting to them for the revenue collection, but then reporting to the law enforcement side for the border stuff. So our cabinet explored the options and decided that Customs and Border Control would go ahead with full revenue collection within Customs and Border Control. So all the back office that happens remain within the purview of the Director of Customs and Border Control. Now, we're still collecting revenue on behalf of the government and the people who came along, so we're still directed by Cabinet and to a large extent the Minister of Finance. But that aspect of cash collection and revenue protection from duty and so on is fully under the control of the Director of CBC. So that's again a departure from the UK model. So going after these bigger countries, able to talk about what worked for them and what didn't work, we're able to learn from some of their mistakes. The last child syndrome, of which I am the last child.
Oh, explains a lot now. Make a note. No, from that perspective, if we're looking at it, and I think this is where we get a chance. We see the examples in businesses all the time. We talk about benchmarking. This was a term that used to be used way back when some of us were studying. What worked best for a company? How did they do this thing? How do we maybe copy that in our own organization, even if they're separate industries? From the Cayman's perspective, enforcement. And we see some things that we may think within the policing realm. They're enforcing the traffic law. They're enforcing the other legislation. People evading their taxes. People are illegal or trying to enter the country. That enforcement. Any of that overlaps with the policing, or is that all within the CBC in that aspect of it?
So last year we had upwards of 500 arrests for work permit and sort of overstaying type offences. So 365 days a year, we have over 500 arrests. So, we
almost working overtime.
To put it in perspective, that wasn't, again, by accident, and it wasn't necessarily all immigration officers doing that. We had a wide join up of efforts. So, tasked by the National Security Council, we had police, labour and pensions, Department of Commerce and Investment. They all have officers with powers of arrest under various laws, along with our own internal compliance officers, all working hand in hand with our intelligence units to find out who present the biggest risk and who are working outside the term. So may that be, a white collar, breach of the laws, or general laborers on a construction site. The amount of enforcement action was visibly more in 2018, and it wasn't just a one-off. We really were planning joint operations and executing joint operations. That's not going away. Actually, I see it only increasing, particularly because so many of those agencies are now sort of under one umbrella, and we've already have the linkages between some of these other enforcement folks. So it was something that the public cried out for. We heard them loud and clear, charged by the National Security Council to deliver, and I believe we've done that. If the Immigration Department alone has arrested over 500 people for breaches of the immigration law, we're continuing to do the right things there. More work to be done, and I really want to take a plug and let the public know that when they share information and concerns with us, we act on those, and a lot of those are the successes that we end up with prosecutions and administrative fines. So please do continue to pass on information and to advise us of concerns and what looks like possible breaches, so that we can take action.
And could I add to that too, Dwayne?
Yes,
just from the work perspective, currently we suffer from serious shortage of staff in the enforcement section. But under work, we will have our own dedicated compliance section that will be able to more proactively monitor what's going on with our external customers, and not as a to hit them with a stick, but to assist in learning about our processes, to ensure that they're compliant with our processes, to make for a much better experience if they have to go through a job seeker or an applications process. So that's going to be a little bit different from what we have currently, because we just have too many people, too few people with so many tasks to do. But we will be able to have a much more robust, proactive compliance section within work.
We're also continuing to work very closely with the UK in relation to the UK Border Force and some of the other agencies in relation to intelligence gathering and investigations and questioning and those things. So again, it wasn't by accident that happened. We had someone on the ground from UK Border Force last year for a good 9 months on the ground. It was invaluable. The training that the officers are given, those officers that are now able to operate that green channel and read body language and those sorts of things is a testament to that. We're looking forward to another officer from the UK Border Force joining us in mid-February to continue on those efforts as well. We've also sent officers up to the UK in relation to specific training. and we were also working with the UK in relation to techniques and training skills around detecting and prosecuting marriages of convenience. So, all over the place where we are trying to make ourselves better and deliver on our mission, making the best use of the limited resources we have. So, really kudos to the men and ladies that are taking up the challenge and are, soaking up this training, and not just training for training's sake, but training, and we were actually demonstrating results across the board. So that is something that we're definitely continuing to do.
And we see the challenge on one hand, border security, revenue collection, for want of a better term, the notion of looking after countries' growth relative to immigration and provisioning of work permits and the like. From the perspective of Caymanian employment and unemployment, we had a question from someone who was asking about the issue of underemployment, and the idea that if and when the workings as we envisage coming up for the national job clearinghouse, persons employed with company A, doing a job, but wouldn't mind, maybe an opportunity to come up with a competitor. If that person was to register with this, would that person's name, be available, and your current employer says, well, little Johnny here is looking and moving, boy.
No, we that's a valid point, Dwayne, and thanks for asking. Because the way the National Jobs Clearinghouse will be set up is for people such as those who are underemployed. They can put as much information on the portal as they feel comfortable doing, or as little, because we will have a way of identifying that individual, but we'll keep their names invisible if that's their preference. So we think that Caymanians will have a much better chance of getting the jobs that they're qualified for, that are available through the National Jobs Clearinghouse, and that's why we have to encourage everyone to. We don't have it up and running yet; it's soon come, but it's going to be Caymanians' best chance of getting the employment that is available, because if they are not registered and an employer is looking for a certain skill set and they go on the portal and they don't find a Caymanian, we cannot then make them go out and search under rocks and bushes. If the Caymanian is not listed, then we don't have a choice but to issue the permit. And so it is vitally important that underemployed Caymanians, unemployed Caymanians, everyone list on the portal, and again, like I said, with as much or as little information as they feel comfortable doing.
So in the past, we operated through the NWDA a ready-to-work program that was actually chaired by the Premier when he wasn't even minister responsible for the NWDA. That's how important it was to him. At the heart of that program is actually the retraining aspect of Caymanians who are unemployed, and particularly the ones that are underemployed, to the point that the program had facilities for childcare, for covering the cost of childcare, for covering the cost of utilities, while people went back to school essentially to learn to reskill for what job opportunities there might be. So every time I come into one of these sort of settings, I always marvel at the changes that happen with people. So I can remember coming on to Mr. Connor's show when it transitioned from just radio to radio being recorded, and then played back on YouTube. So there was a cameraman who sat there and recorded, right? So the cameraman's now been replaced by a camera on the wall, and it's been streamed sort of simultaneously with the radio broadcast. So there's one less person in this room who had a job doing that. Now, thankfully, I think that cameraman is employed elsewhere. But if that was a private sector and that job literally went away because it's been automated, that person now has to be retrained into some other opportunity where the person's skills is necessary again. You see the same thing in the banks, I'm one of those people, because of my background, I tend to do most of my things online, so it's few and far between that I actually go and look at a teller face to face. Very much of what I do is online, to the fact that I ordered pizza for the boys on the weekend, and I told the lady on the phone and said, I don't have any cash, so I want to pay by card. She said, no, all of our drivers are now equipped with a card machine. So it's just becoming, that automation is a constant fight that we're going to have to be in a continual training and retraining of our people as the industries change. That's part of the world that we live in. But that's one of the challenges that we're preparing ourselves for.
Data protection, absolutely. In many ways. Ms. Sharon, if you have another question, we'll go ahead, Mom. If you were going to...
No.
Okay. Perhaps maybe the same coin on the flip side, maybe a different coin. I don't know. Let's see. The notion of that Caymanian or that employee in this country thinking, I can find a job. What about the scenario? I'll give it to you how I got it. Mama says sell it as cheap as you get it. Fellow related story where he's working, seemingly employer is happy, reviews are going well, and one day he sees an ad. He said, that looks a lot like my job. But, apparently it does, huh? Mm-hmm. Go figure. You're always last to know. And he looks at it and goes, well, there's no employer listed, but man, it seems, but the only difference is the pay is really looking good. And, now, from that perspective, could an employer be advertising for your job, and whereas you looking to move and don't have to disclose, the employer in another scenario may be looking at, I need to kind of get a different employee for whatever reason, unbeknownst to you. How would that work with the National Clearinghouse? That employer is looking to hire, looking to identify this particular skill set, I'm looking for this thing. Would that be a place for employers when they're advertising and protections and the like? I understand what the National Job Clearinghouse for the employees register themselves, but the flip side?
So there are two aspects of the National Jobs Clearinghouse that would help in that. One is that in addition to folks actually applying for positions that become available, employers also have the ability to see that their skill sets available. Now, not individual names of those skill sets, but if you're looking for a bookkeeper and there are 3 bookkeepers seeking employment, even if they don't apply for your particular posting, the employer can see that there are 3 there, and they can actually reach out to them and do that. More importantly, our decision makers can see that there are 3 bookkeepers there, and they can actually see which bookkeepers applied for that position. So if there is a disconnect where the employer hasn't explained why none of those persons are suitable, there's the ability to reject that application, to defer it, and to deal with otherwise. If something happens to slip through the work agency, the Premier's also tasked us with setting up the Fair Employment Commission. So if you look at the Gender Equity Commission, that's looking specifically at injustice related to gender. So persons being paid more to do the same job depending on their gender and those sorts of things. The Fair Employment Commission is really about Caymanians who feel that they've been treated unfairly in the workplace. And it may not be as clear-cut as this job is my job with a slightly different title. It may be that there's some other nefarious stuff going on that a committee, a tribunal made up of, or a commission in this case, made up of individuals, quasi-judiciary, that are making judgment call on the weight of the evidence for or against the petitioner in this point, is one of the things that is another layer of protection as well. So we're looking forward to working through with the legislators on legislative drafting folks and how that will work. But that's a standalone sort of independent group with ability to issue judgments on that could include punitive measures as well. So again, layers of protection in there. For the most part, the vast majority of employers are doing the right thing. They're Caymanian employers for the most part, looking to grow their businesses, looking to survive in a competitive marketplace. So that's one aspect that sort of our smoother processes we deal with, but we really must get the placement opportunities for Caymanians right, and where they've been passed over. These sort of layered approach to dealing with that is something that we think will help to make a significant impact in that area.
One thing that will exist in the new system is that our administrators will have the information that they need right there in their face with the jobs portal, excuse me, and the work permit applications process. So, current state, if you advertise in the paper, you can write in and say we had no Caymanians apply, and the administrator really does not have any information to know that that's not the truth, unless a Caymanian writes in and says I applied for this job. But then trying to match that Caymanian with that job that was advertised, it's impossible. So there is a way to cheat the system now if you're so inclined. In the new system, it'll be less less it'll be more difficult to cheat the system because our administrators will have the information they need. So if an employer, for example, says, we didn't find any qualified Caymanians, but the jobs portal shows that there were qualified Caymanians, it allows our administrators to do some further checking. There may be good reasons why they weren't selected, but in the case where they're not good reasons, then it is going to get tougher to get work permits.
Right.
And rightly so, because we know the system is being abused, and as Mr. Howell said, not by everyone, thankfully. But we want to make it more difficult for the bad employers to be able to get work permits at the disadvantage of Caymanians, and that's the goal. That was always this mission, was to make sure that Caymanians have the real first option on jobs that they're qualified to fill.
With respect to that, as you speak to Mr. Wesley Howell and Ms. Sharon Rolston, the Fair Employment Commission, a couple of points. One, when is it expected that legislation come to pass that this will take effect? Any sort of timeline?
We're hoping, if not for the next sitting of the LA, the one right after that. So we have the first draft of legislation out from the drafters now. We have to plug through that again. I'm going to go through with a fine tooth comb, make sure we get it right. But that is coming. So with the blessings of and the support of Cabinet and the members of the LA, we can look forward to that legislation being in place this year.
Will it apply both to public and private sector, or just private sector?
Caymanians specifically. So
across the board.
Across the board.
All right. Charitable, non-government organizations, any form of employment.
Well, government even is going to have to register their employees on the jobs portal as well. So, and their job.
The government has CSAC, which is a sort of similar body, but even sort of government employees have means to appeal to the Gender Tribunal if they think that they're being wronged as well. So similarly, I would see that this new commission would have cross-cutting powers as well.
Yeah. Someone had, and I did not write it down, I should have, had a reference on one iteration of our immigration law, a particular section that had a requirement that, you had to identify Caymanian.
That's a Reg 6.
Okay,
yeah.
there you go.
For training, you're talking about? For training?
Training and then eventually take over and the like, right? Will that still, the way the question was worded, maybe I should try to repeat it verbatim, but will that still be part of all of this new regime going forward, that employers are required to train and identify an Caymanian to eventually, if so desired?
Well, it will exist, but it'll exist in a different form. Yeah. The direction that we want to take is to encourage employers to become accredited, and that is through a vetted process. So we want to encourage the good employers they don't need the Regulation 6 because they're already doing all that they possibly can to give Caymanians job opportunities and upward mobility and to properly develop them. So we have a compliance team that will be proactively monitoring even accredited employers, not on a yearly basis or 5-yearly like the business staffing plan process currently is, but constantly to make sure that they're doing what they said that they were going to do. So that should remove the Regulation 6 as we know it, but it will not remove the responsibility from employers to train Caymanians. And I mean, to make a genuine effort, because it's very easy to say, well, we couldn't find anybody, but I'm a Caymanian, and I believe that we've been given a bad rap in many circles, and there are some very ambitious, intelligent Caymanians who want to work and who just can't seem to get that opportunity. So hopefully we're going to open doors for those kinds of individuals and to help those find a path. I mean, because I think it's important to state that currently at the NWDA, there's not a real filter. Everyone goes there. And so persons who have been referred from the NAU we're working with the NAU to change some of those processes as well, to ensure that all the people that register on our jobs portal are ready and willing and able and qualified to go into the jobs that, in the particular area that they're qualified in. And then we'll find assistance for those who aren't. I mean, those that need some upskilling, we'll direct them in the training direction. Those who need something other than a service that we can provide, we will direct them to those services. And so we really and truly believe that Caymanians the ones that are viable, ready to take up a job, will be readily before the eyes of the employers. So there won't be any more of this well, I really couldn't employ that person. No disrespect, but we had to have that filter so that we can guarantee employers that when they go on that job portal, they won't. Yeah. They'll have someone that, even if they don't have all the skills, they can be trained up. And so we'll encourage employers to train them up, which will help them get accredited, which should, it's more of a carrot approach than a banging with the stick.
Sorry. And we had strong representation from the Small Business Association saying, as a small business, we don't actually get any purview into the business staffing plans that is now. But, they see their role as small business more flexible, more open to hiring persons without experience and then quickly training them up. But what they found themselves in is once those persons have a year or so under their belt, then they're hired up by the more formal, so may that be hospitality or mechanics or any of the other trades. So they would say we would like for the government to recognize the efforts that we've done. So we've sort of made it part of our business model that we bring in people, we put them through the training, we use them for a while, and then we have a sort of a continuous cycle where we're part of this job market in terms of demand and supply as well. So there's some aspects there that we need to be able to find a way to work and recognize those businesses, small and micro, of which there are like over 2,000 who are a significant part of our industry as well.
If you'll forgive us, we want to ask a final question in this vein relative to employment. Some have made representation to us from the perspective that an employer hires someone on a work permit and having to train. Not to the extent to say, well, okay, we're using this particular software, these are the protocols. Not that kind of training. I think everybody gets some sort of training that the organization wants. Yeah, you may be a lawyer, a CPA, or some other professional, but this organization does this way, so this is what we want. We're talking where an employer allegedly has brought in someone on a work permit, sending the person for continuing education and training, giving the person upskilling, some to the extent of formal education while on a work permit. Is that something that can and will be addressed? Someone has said, well, you hire someone on a permit, they should already come trained in skills and experience and can be able to jump off the deep end and swim.
So two ways to look at that. One is that our businesses compete locally in a very competitive market. They also compete regionally, internationally. So getting the best labor and maintaining the best labor is something that's a must for them to survive business-wise. So the same accreditation process that we're still working out the proposals for that to go through the cabinet. But one of the things that was flagged is that there are some employers that are not only training their non-Cayman employees, but they're disproportionately training a whole cadre of Cayman employees up through the ranks, including placements overseas and other things. So I'm not sure that the policymakers may want us to say none of your employees get training, because I think training is one of the things you either train and evolve or you go away. But to ensure that our systems and the benefits that we can give really recognize sort of the carrot approach, that the behavior of training and developing and promoting Cayman is one of the things that will make you a preferred employer, an accredited employer, and that will happen. If you are breaking the law, then equally we have the big stick approach where you can be fined, taken to court, and all those other sorts of things. But really looking at what is our best employers look like in relation to Cayman labor, and it would really be around those opportunities that they give all the way up the ladder.
Well, in the work permit vetting process as well, if a person isn't qualified, we should be able to capture that from the outset. And we have more avenues where people can report now. So, we recognize that the current state is being abused to some degree, and by a large degree to some few employers. But we'll have much better processes to catch those kinds of situations.
Well, maybe a supplementary. Not a question. So.
And you know what, too? It all depends on the post, because if there are no Caymanians with the basic level of education that post requires you to have, then it becomes more difficult to say, well, you can't train that person.
Well, that's what I asked. So to some extent, the employer who has advertised for this level job, but has appointed the person to this level job. As we understand, has happened at times, not just to get around fees, but different avenues. Will we be able to capture that so that employer who is trying to game the system, as it were, isn't so readily able to?
We have in the past gotten tips from individuals that feel disenfranchised within the company, other persons that might overhear things. So there are ways of doing that. We don't have income tax in this country, so there's no way of looking at person's take-home pay. But there are other ways of trying to assess, what people's compensation are and what their titles are.
Okay.
May apply for one thing and use another one. The other aspect I had about the training of individuals, if you're operating in some of the professional disciplines, may it be project management, medical, even teacher, they have to go through a certain level of professional development every year in order to keep their certification. So, we wouldn't want to discourage, training on that part. So if you look at our lawyers and accountants and those people, that's part of it. But we have to ensure that Caymanians have the opportunity for employment and upward mobility within the organization here. That's the thing that has made Cayman and Caymanians successful over the years.
Well, we're very grateful, to both you, individual and collective, coming on. We would like to respectfully invite you publicly as and when. The first is, just a few hours away, but going forward, in any format that we can help to inform and engage the public. Important, very wonderful transformation. Radical is a word that I think I've seen a series of sermons embraced, and I thought, great word, Look to
not my word, is the Premier's word.
No. Well, that's why I can say it, but in closing, is there anything, perhaps start with you, Ms. Sharon, that you may want to remind or emphasize? And again, Mr. Hall?
Well, I'd just like, thank you, Dwayne, for giving us this opportunity to shed a little bit of light on what's happening currently and what's yet to come. We appreciate that right now the water might be a little bit muddy, but for the most part, business will just be as usual, carrying on. But I will certainly take you up on your offer to come back when work gets
working.
Yeah, before then. But as we start to do some of the legislative changes, and have met more of our milestones, just to give the public an update. But just to give everyone the assurance that our staff are going to continue working hard. Unfortunately, we don't have anything new just yet, but we promise good things to come in the future. And if you can just bear with us as we go through these difficult changes, it's very difficult for the staff. And kudos to them because they've endured a lot. I am always amazed at their tenacity and their ability to just keep rolling with the punches. They've had personal challenges. We've lost some people. We have people on medical leave, and yet they keep the lights on and they do as best as they can in a very difficult environment. So kudos to them, and we just will continue to serve as best we can and then promise really good things, radically different things in the future.
There you go.
So I again want to emphasize to the business community now that they've had an opportunity to see the law and the regs, that they should realize that it really is sort of business as usual for work as we go forward with this first phase of the transition. So they still apply in the usual places in the usual manner, and we'll give them plenty of notice as to any of the changes that we have coming forward on that. And as Ms. Wilson said, we can't say it enough, our team members are absolutely fantastic. They've been working on customer service training over the last couple of weeks. So the first thing that you'll be able to see from them is our we're stepping it up in terms of customer service. And for those that think that customer service and enforcing the law don't go hand in hand, we've proven them wrong on that. Now we have compelling evidence in terms of numbers to say, yeah, we can do both and do it really well. So looking forward to continue to serve the Caymanian public, the Caymanian job seekers and employees, and we see it as our duty and mission, and I'm really proud to be a part of a team that's making this happen. So next time we come, it won't be necessarily me talking. I'd really like to introduce some of our very passionate individuals throughout the organization, and talk about why they do what they do in relation to, they love their country and they want to continue to prepare a place for their children and grandchildren to be a part of a productive society. So that's why we do what we do.
Safety, security, stability, and the notion that there's success to be had for all of us. And hopefully, I not just publicly, but privately treated you respectfully and appropriately. And I thank you for engaging and for being so willing to speak so candidly. It's important for us, and thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much.
All right, well, as a public, let's do our part. If we see something that's not quite right, don't turn a blind eye. Report it to the requisite authorities, and if they don't act, has to be somebody. Call Susan. I don't know. Don't call Susan.
Susan will call me, so that's okay.
See, you have direct access. All right, we're gonna pause. When we come back, we'll ask you to rejoin us. Different guests, different topic, but the same opportunity to be informed and engaged. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
I've got some beautiful clothes. I know just where they go.
Puritan, now using the most popular and eco-friendly cleaning solvents. Take advantage of our ongoing discounts on all men and women's apparel. Ask about other discounts available in store. 3 convenient locations to serve you: Savannah Countryside, Elgin Avenue, Georgetown, Eastern Avenue, Georgetown. Drive-through, rain or shine. Free pickup and delivery available. Call Puritan Cleaners at 949-7104. You feel good when you look good.
Hi, I'm Dawn McLean Brady, President of the Cayman Islands Small Business Association, better known as CISPA. Small businesses drive Cayman's economy. As small business owners, we depend on government to create an environment where we, as entrepreneurs, can do what we do best, and that's to provide products and services that are valuable to our customers and, in turn, employ others. The cruise piers and cargo ports provide these opportunities. Encourage our government to build a port and let the Caymanian entrepreneurial spirit shine. Support the port, support our tourism.
Kirk Freeport is inviting local customers to view the highly exclusive Patek Philippe one-of-a-kind unique traveling collection of watches. The collection will be in Grand Cayman for just 1 week before it's whisked off to its next destination, and features a collection of unique, rare timepieces from the last family-owned Genevan luxury watch manufacturer. Visit Kirk Freeport's Bayshore Mall location between Friday the 25th and Thursday the 31st of January to view the Patek Philippe traveling collection in Cayman for 1 week only. Visit KirkFreeport.com for more information.
Whether you're planning your child's next birthday party or simply looking for a social night out, look no further than Kingpin Bowling at King Sports Center.
With a range of packages and specials for bowling parties, socials, and corporate team building, Kingpin Bowling offers what no one else can. The only bowling alley in Cayman. And it's indoor fun, which means no mosquitoes, AC, and don't forget about their bowling bar. Book your bowling lanes today. Call 946-BOWL. That's 946-2495. Email kingpinbowling@candw.ky. For more information, visit their website, www.kingsportscenter.com.
King Sports Center, providing your fitness, recreation, and relaxation needs.
Monday through Friday, 3 to 6 p.m. Radio Cayman's Super Jam Show, the #1 drive time entertainment show on your radio, featuring Will Sinatra.
Enjoy a mix of pop, hip-hop, reggae, dancehall, Latin, soca, urban gospel, old school.
The Super Jam Show is fueled by the proud sponsorship of insurance agent Michael Webster from Cayman Insurance Center.
Don't take chances with your family's future.
At Flow, we know that 4 are better than 1. Introducing Flow Quad Play. Packed with the fastest, most reliable broadband, the power and control of Flow Evo TV, Cayman's best mobile experience, and tons of home phone minutes, all in one convenient package from only $199 a month. With 4 plans to choose from, you're sure to find one that fits your needs. It's value, ease, and convenience all on one bill with Cayman's #1 network. Find out why 4 are better than 1 with Flow Quad Play at discoverflow.ky. Terms and conditions apply.
It gets into the territory where it's like
Whoa, Eminem coming on Youth Flex?
2 trailer park girls go round the outside.
It's our first Where They Now segment.
I don't know about you, but I go and get my autograph.
No, man. We're not talking about that, Eminem. We're talking about a past host of Youth Flex.
Eminem was a co-host of season 1 with the old man over there.
Watch who you call old.
I don't really look that much older than 16, do I?
I wonder what Youth Flex was like back then.
The word of the week is homage. Homage. It means to honor or respect.
Plus, John Gray High School's Business Club president is here to tell us about the Valentine's fundraiser.
So join us this Wednesday from 4 to 5 p.m. right here on Radio Cayman, 89.9 FM, and Youth Flex, a program for all people by young people.
I look at these kids, and I see us when we were young. I see myself when I was younger.
Youth Flex, more than talk, more than talk, more than talk, more than talk.
Since 1993, Rotary Central has worked diligently each year to provide quality bus shelters to our community. A traveling convenience to our school children, the elderly, young people going to work, guest workers, and visitors using the public bus. We, Rotary Central, help you, our advertisers, make it happen. Your marketing dollar travels a far way. Positioning your message, your product, your services, your presence in over 83 bus shelters. Every dollar you spend, every advert you place helps to build another bus shelter, providing modest comfort for Cayman travelers. Reserve space now on the only billboard medium in the Cayman Islands. Email rotaryshelters@gmail.com. rotaryshelters@gmail.com. The Bus Shelters, a partner in community convenience. Another inspiration program by Rotary Central Cayman Islands.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back to Talk Today. Thank you so much for joining us. And it truly is a pleasure to be able to welcome to the studio Director at the National Gallery, Ms. Natalie Ricard, and one of the board members, Mr. Carl Brown.
Good afternoon, audience, and good afternoon to our delightful host and partner, Radio Cayman.
Delightful host, wow. Okay.
He's good at this.
Yeah.
We are delighted to be here as always.
I kind of like this, man.
You can sit back and relax, and we'll just keep talking.
See now, Miss Susan, these are guests who know what a host needs.
Well, we're very grateful that you could make time for us today to talk about this exciting new project.
Well, we're excited to hear about it and to not just engage, but inform our public. And I think that when we start to look, I had a chance just recently, if I may sort of start by this. We look at, let's say, primary school students in particular, and we look at a teacher that might say, okay, we have this activity. You're free to paint, use your fingers, use the brushes. If you don't want to paint, maybe there's some other, way to express yourself. And to the perhaps uninitiated, they may look at it and say, well, what's going on in this classroom? It looks like a free-for-all. But it's a control free-for-all. If you were there at the beginning, the teacher may have said, okay, here are some of the rules. No throwing the paint, no running around with the things. If you're going to do this, move from station to station, well, we want you to move your stuff over and wash. And then you watch the process unfold. And then let's say it's the last thing the children do on a Friday, and over a series of weeks. And then at the end, there's this creative product. You watch that evolution, you watch the anticipation, the excitement, you watch the children start to understand that there's a creative way, and even if they may not like, in their minds, art, they come to be engaged. I think the gallery is the same thing. You go down there and just to catch your thoughts for a bit, maybe to escape from the chaos of the day, you get a lot. Right, Ms. Natalie?
I think so, and it's funny, we were talking about this as a team the other day, is that we would love more time as a staff to sit back and contemplate the art, but there's just far too much to do. But I think that as a lot of our listeners know, that the National Gallery plays multiple roles in the community in terms of providing a museum space for the National Art Collection, which is an absolute treasure trove of our history and the story that we've come to be able to tell over many generations through artists. But of course, it's a temporary exhibition space as well. So we're here today to talk about one specific new exhibition, which we'll get to shortly. And then we have our education studio. So we do about 50 workshops, classes, events and lectures every single month. The majority of those, if not all of them, are free to the public. And we talk about, our artist students being every age group from about 18 months and literally, as you say, using your hands covered in paint, getting very, very messy on a Friday morning, and going all the way through to working with the seniors' homes with our EY Seniors Project, and ensuring that this sort of creative conversation, a chance to the seniors program specifically looks at sharing objects and stories and working with older people as well that might be, not have the opportunities for conversations as much as we all need to have. So there's various ways that I think art makes an enormous difference into each of our lives. And I think I've talked to you before is that I don't paint or draw. I'm not very good in terms of artists. So we don't all have to be great artists, but we have to find creative pursuits to balance out our existence.
Well, I think that's the beauty of it, Carla. That just like beauty, art is an eye beholder. The notion that, I joke and say I can't even draw a straight line with a ruler, right? But the idea that you can appreciate something, not to name drop, but I look at works of, say, Gordon Solomon, for instance, and Randy Chalet, and very distinctive. I see similarities, but very distinctive. And to be able to see their pieces and to know them and to understand that they're making this not just a commercial, viable concern, but they're inspiring other upcoming artists, as perhaps they were inspired by, I don't want to call them the forefathers, but the people like Bendel Hydes, who, when you think to the Cayman's history, for instance, and the notion that the artist, the musician, the athlete, probably, we don't have 100 years under our belt, even though we not long ago celebrated our quincentennial. We're not in the upper room as yet, as we were in Carl.
We are sometimes there and we don't know it.
Okay.
Bendel Hydes is, as you refer to him, has been a remarkable part of who we are, but even more so, he has been our Beethoven. And I say that because
our first
Bendel,
Beethoven, in terms of the visual arts specifically.
Yeah.
We do need to quantify that in terms of visual arts. We've had some amazing creatives over many, many decades, but in the visual arts.
Yeah, okay.
And I say that because at a certain part of his life, he was not able to discern color, but he was continuing to paint. And the translation of his work into what we have been and what we are is still remarkable in spite of malady. So the other aspect of the interest of where we are now in allowing our creative place in society to really volcanically erupt is because we were seemingly so preoccupied with making sure that we took care of our children while men were at sea. And the ladies home were doing the work of making sure the islands were intact for the men to come home to somewhere that was good, that part of Cayman's life was neglected, even though it was there.
And I think that's really key. And, if you come and visit the National Gallery and go into the National Art Collection, we start the story of the formal visual arts in the sort of 60s and 70s when you saw people actually starting to paint and use those traditional sort of painterly materials. But it's based and founded on a much older form of creative expression. So we have examples of silver thatch basketry, we have examples of quilting and appliquing, and I think you remember the Revive exhibition that we did at the National Gallery to honour that creative form several years ago, and our maritime art. I mean, every one of the ships that were built were beautiful creative works of art. So we have an incredible history of creative expression, but in very functional, practical ways, as Carl said, which started transforming and changing in the 70s and the early 80s, 60s, 70s and 80s, which forms the basis of the conversation that we're having now with this new biennial project that we're launching next week.
Well, as I listen to you, I'm thinking, when we think back to some of the artisans and the like, our built environment, we look at our town halls, the library, and even in one or two of our churches specifically. Not only is there a nautical theme, but we see the craftsmanship. I love our library in town, and I love, I still call it the West Bay Town Hall, but you go in there, you can easily ignore the floor, you can easily ignore the concrete wall.
But you can't look
but not
up.
the ceiling.
Yeah, but can't
ignore the ceiling.
And not be amazed.
Yeah.
Along with being amazed at the man beyond that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that why I share that is that it makes me continually have a renewed appreciation that on one hand we've lost, perhaps because in the early days it was element of survival. subsistence. The people who perhaps dabble in art didn't see it as such. It may have been creative writing and poetry and the like, and so it wasn't preserved, it wasn't valued, and it got lost over time through.
And that's why the early days of Miss Lassie's work, she was regarded as a bit of an eccentric, as opposed to be an artist who
but is it one and the same?
For fruition at a very interesting time. Also to refer to our present National Gallery is the most modern art museum in the Caribbean. It is one of the top 5 in the Caribbean also. But prior to that, we did have, in a de facto way, 11 art museums over 200 years. That's 11 boatyards. And
well said.
It was
well said.
Unleashed the creativity that went up to 1,500 cubic tons of wood that sailed these seas. So our artistry kind of, in spite of the fact it was not viewed as specific artistry, it in its functionality and its vivacity, and when it was put to work on the ocean, we were come to be regarded as some of the most prolific artists in the Western Hemisphere.
And I think that's where something like the National Collection at the National Gallery is so important. And of course the work that the museum do, the Culture Foundation, the National Trust to preserve that history. And the National Collection in our museum is really an amazing area where artists can tell that story. And I think many of the projects that we do at the National Gallery really do look at building a bridge between that grand history, those skills that we've often lost and we're desperately trying to hold on to, and to bring them back into the forefront and share them with the public and explain why it's so critical to hold on to those skills and our unique history in this very multicultural world that we're now living in Cayman.
As we speak to the substantive topic and we engage the public, I was thinking along the lines of two things. On one hand, the need to revisit our heritage and ensure that we capture it and not just preserve it and portray it and promote it and the like. But on the other, are we at risk in trying to embrace all of that the veracity sometimes of what is presented? Are we at risk of compromising it by embracing and trying to be so inclusive and creating a collection now? So, for instance, it's just
I think that's a great question, and I think, to be honest, it's something that every country in the world is grappling with. You know, we talk about globalization. Every country is managing that. So this is a conversation that's being had all over the world, and I find, history in Cayman so fascinating because of that globalization was very present hundreds of years ago. It's not a new conversation. Influences were coming from all over the world, and I think that it's very, very critical that in national museums like the National Gallery, the National Museum, etc., do make every effort to preserve that unique story and at the same time support artists that are developing new works. If we can combine the two and have exhibitions about that grand history through contemporary art, then that's an amazing opportunity, and that's really what we're going to be looking at moving forward with this very big exhibition that we are launching next week. It's the first Cayman Biennial. And the concept of a biennial is a big art event that's held every 2 years. And then we've heard of the Venice Biennial. We're certainly not trying to be them quite yet. But the idea is it's a great opportunity to share a very broad survey of art from a country, both with a local and international audience. This first year, we have gone through a very large process, a juried process with local and international jurors, and we have 40 contemporary artists that are going to be exhibiting their work at the National Gallery and in sites around the island over a 3-month period. The main exhibition will be at the National Gallery over 2 of our gallery spaces, but we will be taking elements of the exhibition to Cayman Brac and Little Cayman, and also around Grand Cayman as well. So there's a very exciting program developing around the exhibition with 40 artists that really are showcasing the very most exciting developments in contemporary art in 2019.
Now, with that juried selection, as you shared, you had a number of sort of submissions and then the selection of 40. What was the criteria for selection?
I think that's a very important question, and what we're trying to do with this exhibition is not just put up a whole bunch of lovely artworks. We're also trying to include a very important professional developmental process for artists as well. We don't have an art school in Cayman, so we're not used to that sort of juried critique. And when I say critique, I don't mean critical in any way. Critique is giving feedback. Okay. And it's very hard to continue developing your practice without any feedback from a teacher or a jury or an audience. So we've woven that into this first inaugural, I hate that word, it's very difficult to say, this first variation of the biennial. And to provide a competitive element to it as well, which we'll get to. I'm mentioning Bendel Hides before. We are honouring Bendel in a wonderful way as part of this biennial. So the criteria was technical strength, conceptual strength. So what does the piece talk about or try and grapple with or say? And when we're looking at a lot of contemporary art is often responding to what's happening in the community or globally. So rather than just be a beautiful landscape, it's often, talking about, it's delving a bit further. When we talk about the Native Sons, we know that their work responds to history, environment, identity. So we were looking at that kind of angle in many of these works. And then lastly, originality. What is unique about that artist? What are they bringing to the conversation that we might not have seen before? We have a handful of emerging artists as part of the exhibition, which are doing some very exciting things. People that are away at art school, Brendan Saunders, Paige Jordison, Cameron Bridgman, as well as many of our very established art of many of the Native Sons that we know. We can't give everyone away right now. You'll have to come and see the exhibition next weekend. But it's a wonderful survey of work by established artists as well as people that we haven't seen before.
All right, well, when we come back from our break, perhaps we can delve further into it and maybe get a perspective so that we appreciate that as the culture emerges and evolves, that we're still respectful to our history and our heritage. Please stay tuned to Talk Today.
Satisfaction is guaranteed 24 hours a day, whether it's music or information.
From Grand Cayman to Cayman Brac to Little Cayman, we've got you covered.
You ever hear a thing like that?
Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.
Radio Cayman. Headline. Radio Cayman's newsroom. Headline. These are the biggest stories right now.
The Cayman Islands National Weather Service has recognized Mr. Gilbert Miller as the 2018 Employee of the Year. Mr. Miller is a meteorologist for the Cayman Islands National Weather Service and is also the lead meteorologist in charge of maritime matters. The department also recognized Mr. Kirk Douglas as Technical Engineer of the Year and Mr. David Thompson as Weather Observer of the Year. The three employees were recognized at a staff appreciation function back in December. In news elsewhere, a campaign by Australia, human rights groups and international sports organizations to stop Thailand from extraditing to Bahrain a detained soccer player who has refugee status in Australia has gotten a personal touch with an open letter from the jailed man's wife delivered to the Thai Prime Minister. The lawyer for Hakeem Al-Arabi handed over the letter Wednesday at Government House, imploring the Prime Minister to free her client because of his probable persecution in Bahrain, where he was convicted in absentia of arson of a police station, a charge he denies. Foxconn Technology Group said Wednesday it is shifting the focus of its planned $10 billion Wisconsin campus away from blue-collar manufacturing to a research hub, while insisting it remains committed to creating 13,000 jobs as promised. The facility was heralded by U.S. President Donald Trump and former Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker as a once-in-a-generation opportunity to return manufacturing to the Midwest and the United States. Foxconn, a major supplier to Apple, is the world's largest contract maker of electronics and China's largest private employer. Those are your latest updates here on Radio Cayman. I'm Shanta Gallego.
Radio Cayman, the voice of the Cayman Islands. What's happening in your community? News and information, music and more. You can find us. www.radiocayman.gov.ky. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Radio Cayman is your choice, your voice for today's biggest news. Radio Cayman.
Talk today. But I do have some questions.
Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back to Talk Today. Thank you so much for joining us, Miss Natalie Urquhart and Carl Brown, our guests, the director of the National Gallery and one of the board members. And as we look at the Cayman Biennial, that's a nice little ring. Let's see how.
Yeah, it does. We're excited to see Carl, where this takes us.
You came up with a good name, man.
No, I could not take credit.
No, but share with us more, because as we were looking at it and the showcase of some visual art pieces that are coming up and the opportunity over 3 month period.
3 months, absolutely.
Ms. Natalie?
Well, I think something Carl said in the break, looking at what the biennial is hoping to achieve, why we're bringing this type of model to Cayman, which of course this year it's starting relatively small, and we hope over the next couple of iterations that we're really going to see this grow to multiple sites across the Cayman Islands, all sort of creating art at once. But Carl, you mentioned, I think, it's this idea of 40 artists all practicing in very, very different ways with different themes. There was no prescribed theme this year, specifically because we wanted artists to create their best work around whatever topic they wanted to talk about. Of course, we're in Cayman. We have this grand maritime history. We're still very connected to our environment. So that water, ocean base, maritime has definitely woven through, I'd say, 2/3 of the artwork, which is wonderful to see. And subsequently, we have called the exhibition Cross Currents, to weave in that maritime history, but also to talk about contemporary currents and those multiple cross-references that the artists are engaging with.
Multiple platforms, multiple visions, transcending various ages, and multiple themes converging. It is going to be a kaleidoscope like has never been seen before.
Which makes it hard to put together from a curatorial perspective because there's no themes, but it's exciting. We're very excited.
And for the public, for that curious person, to that individual who may consider herself to be a aficionado of sorts, what can we expect to see as we go about? I mean, there are 40 pieces you've shared, but
there's actually more than 40 pieces because a couple of the artists submitted 2 works, and artists were invited to submit up to 2 pieces, and some artists were successful with both pieces. To pull out a couple, we have a really interesting installation of a schooner, a contemporary installation, but weaving back into this tradition by a very young artist who's just graduating art school. I think that's a very interesting piece to come down and see. It's enormous. It just arrived in the crate from the States where she's at university, and I think that's going to be a real piece that people talk about. We have works in glass. We've got fibre pieces. We've got basketry pieces. We've got traditional 2-dimensional art pieces. A lot of installation. We've got videos.
Audio and vision.
And performance. So we're going to be inviting a couple of the artists that have created films around their work to come and do performances, which is a relatively new platform for contemporary art in Cayman, obviously tying back to our grand tradition of storytelling, movement and dance, and even weaving in music. But bringing this together in what we would call a performance art piece is a relatively new genre for Cayman, and we're very excited to be launching that as part of the biennial.
I think as we look at Cayman and art, I think of many people, but with great respect to all of them. I think Bendel Hydes is synonymous. You can't think of boxing and not Muhammad Ali, football and not Pelé. Well, art and Bendel go hand in hand. I think he persevered probably against all odds, even when. So how does this all tie in, and how do we, in honouring him, his contribution, his sacrifice, his diligence and persistence, and hopefully that encouragement and motivation that he still sort of provides for all those budding artists.
And it's 45 years since his first exhibition this year. His first formal exhibition as a professional artist, was at the Royal Palms Hotel in 1974. And I think Anita Ebanks was part of that. There were a few different the dramatists that came together to create the Culture Foundation at the time. But Bendel Hydes exhibited in their lobby. And I spoke to him a few weeks ago, and he's celebrating 45 years this year. So we thought it was very adequate, that the prize, no, we haven't got to the awards element of the biennial, but there will be 2 awards every year. A cash award for the jurors' selection. There's a 5-person jury with 3 local jurors and 2 international curators, because we're bringing curators to see local art with the idea of increasing the visibility of Caymanian art internationally. There's going to be this sort of grand prize, and we are going to be calling it after Bendel Hydes. It's the Bendel Hydes Award. He's delighted to hear that. There's a cash element to the prize. There's going to be the invitation for a solo exhibition at the National Gallery, which will be funded, and the opportunity for the gallery to buy the jurors' selected piece for the National Collection. The second award, we were very cognizant that we wanted to ensure that we were providing opportunities for the emerging artist level and really encouraging younger artists at this sort of art school level, so we'd say sort of 18 and up, to get involved in the exhibition as well. So there's going to be an Emerging Artist Award, and that is, rather than a cash prize, it's a contribution, a commitment to a developmental opportunity for that younger artist in terms of funding an artist residency internationally, or giving a grant towards a degree program that they might need more support for. So there's going to be both awards, and I think that, as you said, calling it the Bendel Hydes Award for the jurors' selected piece is really honouring this grand tradition that Bendel has led. Being an artist in the early 70s in Cayman was quite a unique position to be in.
It was lonely.
It was lonely. I think you're absolutely right. And look at where we are today. The gallery's got about 200 creative artists on their database, and we know, in February alone, we have things like the Cayman Arts Festival, we have the Culture Foundation National Arts Awards, we have Kaboo with its art and music section. Cayman is flourishing in terms of the arts in the widest sense, not just visual art. And it's a very, very exciting time to be practicing in the Cayman Islands.
But we see the trailblazers, the pioneers, whatever we call them in whatever aspects, they've gone before. And I think, with the greatest respect, perhaps there are those who may recall much more intimately, what you wanted to call it, the challenge, the struggles, you want to call it the great celebrations. But people like Bendel, was it the stick-to-itness,
And the McCoys of Northside, who did furniture that was exquisite. While it was functional, it was off the charts in its absolute astounding beauty.
But the thing is, I could probably sell someone this thing that has some utility rather than this service that may save you money, or this thing that you put on your wall, or some sculpture you put in your garden, or other thing. Easier to sell this thing over here with utility than this thing with the aesthetic appeal. Now, from that perspective, as we look at the emergent artists, I gather the age is 18 and up. Why 18? And the reason I'm asking, when we look at the youth and the definition of the youth, why not come lower down, 16, 14?
Because I think this is the wrong venue for that. We might do a satellite exhibition in future iterations. We do a lot of student exhibitions throughout the year. So we work with students in our Walkers Art Club. We have school tours and activities. So we literally have thousands of students coming and using the site as a learning opportunity, either in terms of developing a skill in the classroom or engaging with a piece of artwork and discussing it, critiquing it, learning how to sort of do art criticism and history. And of course, those skills go far, far beyond the creative sphere. This biennial is meant to be a sort of a national showcase, that it really is showcasing the very best in contemporary art, and reading it in a competitive way to encourage artists to really push themselves and stretch themselves and develop their practice further. We don't have an art school, so it's very difficult sometimes to kind of keep going back to pushing your skill. So I think we wanted to concentrate on that adult level for the biennial, because we are already doing so much in terms of the student art level. And if anybody is interested in getting more involved in those education programs, they just need to give us a call at the gallery and come down and be part of that. I do think there's a potential for collaborating with the Children's National Festival of the Arts and some of the other opportunities as well to bring more visibility in terms of an art award from the gallery. I think that would be a great connection.
And I hear and support it, and I just only was asking from the perspective that we even look, say, in the sciences. So educators would tell us that primary and middle school student male or female, very actively engaged, very excited. By the time they get to high school, something happens. And it's not just in Cayman. It may not just be in the Western Hemisphere. I'm thinking of the student who is interested in art, who may have been pretty good, has an interest, doing well at O levels or whatever the school program is. But at some point in that academic, as they get ready to graduation, perhaps the parent, the teacher, or someone else saying, well, you need to get a real job now. Maybe you need to study something that's going to earn you some money. Having that recognition earlier than the age of majority might.
Well, we do have the National Gallery Art Awards
yes.
that are part of the graduation program at all of the high schools, both public and private, across the island. And that's been running for about 12 to 15 years, where we actually work with the art school teacher to have the school select their top student in the visual arts. So each year they will get a commitment to a certificate to any gallery workshops that they want to attend, membership and supplies. And so we're very, very proud to be working directly with the schools to recognise the outstanding art student. But at the same time, we have a very interesting program called National Gallery Creative Careers, and that's been running again for many years, originally supported by Deutsche Bank, and that funds both work experience opportunities but also paid internships, so coming to the gallery to learn about what creative careers are. It also involves us going out to the schools and talking about art careers, offering students opportunities in workshops that we do at the gallery for professional development outside of the school system, and also the Walker's Art Club, which is our after-school weekly sessions that starts with 5-year-olds and goes to teen development for that pre-GCSE portfolio project. I think, as you say, it's sort of any subject, and we still work within quite a traditional education system in Cayman in terms of we have a lot of examinations to get through. So we always joke that we like to think that we trick people to come and learn about art by actually offering schools the ability to learn about science, maths, English, language, certainly history, community and identity, that's an obvious one, but through a visit to the National Gallery. So we're very, very proactive in that respect. But I think it's about inspiring people. I was on the YCLA circuit a few years ago, and I was very fortunate and honoured to be invited to go and speak at a lot of schools. And certainly when you're with primary school students, everybody's got their hand up when you ask them a question. Everybody wants to jump up and engage in conversation. Obviously, we were talking about art and creativity, so very, very actively engaged. And then we all get a bit older and a bit cooler and a bit wiser when we become teenagers, and we get very busy. So I think what the gallery can do and play a role in is providing a very creative learning experience that can support the national curriculum and be part of the school system, but offer a very, very different learning approach.
All right. Well,
so this biennial is going to be an intersection of inspiration transcending all ages. And it will be drawing on those youngsters who have their curiosity already stoked, but to engage them to aspire to a completely different level.
All right. Well, when we come back, let's conclude the discussion and talk more about the biennial, get people excited, perhaps extend an invitation, and see where it takes us. Please stay tuned for Talk Today.
A caring and community spirit, cherished family and cultural values. These are some of the things that still embodies the Caymanian way of life in the Eastern Districts today. Savannah Pharmacy, your neighborhood pharmacy, located in Countryside Shopping Village, is delighted to offer products and services of real value. Whether it's catering to your family's medical needs or carrying apparel, gifts, and beauty products, Savannah Pharmacy provides you with more than just prescriptions. Remember, they're always just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours, including Sundays and holidays. Savannah Pharmacy. For more information, call 946-3336.
Hello, I'm Joseph Woods, the Acting Port Director. Our port facility is the hub of the Cayman Islands commerce and economic activity, handling $658 million in imported goods annually. From groceries to construction materials, all sectors of our economy depend on the port. But it is now 40 years old. Its infrastructure is degrading, and we feel the strain from insufficient space for both cargo and cruise operations. The time is now. A new expanded port facility is needed to allow both cargo and cruise to operate efficiently and to support our island's continued growth and development. Support the port, support our tourism, support Cayman's continued growth and development.
Don't forget to tune in every Monday through Friday for the 7 a.m. news, brought to you by Cayman National Bank, proudly serving the Cayman Islands since 1974. Visit Cayman National Bank today for all of your financial needs.
It gets into the territory where it's like
Whoa, Eminem coming on Youth Flex?
Two trailer park girls go round the outside. It's our first Where They Know segment.
I don't know about you, but I go and get my autograph.
No, man. We're not talking about that, Eminem. We talking about a past host of Youth Flex.
Eminem was a co-host of season 1 with the old man over there.
Watch who you call old. I don't really look that much older than 16, do I?
I wonder what Youth Flux was like back then.
The word of the week is homage. Homage. It means to honor or respect.
Plus, John Gray High School's business club president is here to tell us about the Valentine's fundraiser.
So join us this Wednesday from 4 to 5 p.m. right here on Radio Cayman, 89.9 FM, and Youth Flex, a program for all people by young people.
I look at these kids and I see us when we were young. I see myself when I was younger.
Youth Flex, more than talk, more than talk, more than talk, more than talk.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back to Talk Today in the studio with Miss Natalie Urquhart, Carl Brown, and the Cayman Biennial. I don't know, man. Carl?
Cayman Biennial is a wide open opportunity. It is the letting the genie out of the bottle. In a different sense, in the artistic sense.
Letting the genie out of the bottle. You know what happens then, no? You can't put it back in it.
No,
we don't want to put it back.
We don't intend to put it back.
I just so you know.
Because the realm of art is it is a registration of humanity unfettered. We want to extend that opportunity because we are such a small geographical society. It is good to have open spaces of the mind, set free in color, fabric, in visual, and in audio.
There used to be a wonderful PSA on American television way back when. Mine was a terrible thing to waste. We probably all saw it at some point. And that's the beautiful part of the creative arts, being able to express, to comment, to critique, and sometimes to be, very, very deliberate at poking, the bear, as it were.
Well, we have things to say, we're living in a very changing society, and I think that it's important to have a safe place sometimes to have those conversations. And artists are often grappling with all sorts of social, economic, political, religious at times, conversations that they want to comment on. They want to comment on. And I think that certainly contemporary art is very engaged in that type of work, but providing a safe environment that promotes dialogue and conversation around some of these difficult topics is important.
From that perspective, because I no longer make apology for it. I think everything is political and everything is economic and everything is educational. If you're not being informed and involved, then you're missing the boat, as it were. And if you're not on board a cat boat, you're missing the experience. As part of this Cayman Biennial, as part of the educational initiative, for all of us, the parent as well as the pupil, the principal, the school as well as the policy maker, how do we ensure that we are, at the very least, moving along a similar path or a path that moves us forward?
Well, we're hoping that something like the Biennial, that is a showcase of 40 artists, I mean, that's a very large group of artists to have in one exhibition, inspires. I mean, ultimately, if we could take away after 3 months what we hope the community will get out of this, they'll know some more artists, they'll be introduced to some of the younger artists doing some very exciting work and sort of watch this space mentality. But they'll be inspired to get creative themselves. They'll be inspired to have conversations around some of the pieces, some of the topics that, artists have decided to engage in. And as we said, there was no set theme this year specifically, so artists had a wide scope in what they could talk about. That may change in next iterations, but certainly for the opening session, we wanted it to be wide open. And there's a very developed education program sort of a vast in scope around this. So that includes things like portfolio clinics for artists both established and emerging. That would include high school students as well. There are lectures around all sorts of different types of art. We're introducing new models of art. There are going to be artist talks from the artists themselves. There'll be conversations with guest curators from overseas about how to get involved in art fairs and how to get more commercial about your work if you want to explore it as actually a full-time profession. We'll be talking to some marketing companies about how to best market your practice. And again, when we talk about the arts, we roll it all in there. That's, anyone that's creative can benefit from these workshops that we're hosting. And we have partnered with Butterfield again, who are long-term partners of the National Gallery in the Arts in Cayman, to make sure that those workshops and opportunities are free for anybody that wants to get involved.
So that monetizing, as it were. We reference, the Chalettes and the Solomons where we talk about pointillism or cubism, but I always think of my good friend Ray Banks, and
who's one of our very best artists.
Yeah, without question. His pieces resonate strongly with the cultural ethos and the way he'll present something. So maybe he's spinning a gig or playing a marble. So whether it's, his, I don't know, I don't even call them doodlings, because we're having a meeting and he's doing something. I thought, why am I not putting this in safekeeping? Because it captures what is transpiring then and there. And is it that we don't see the value, the economic value, the cultural and historical value? Oh, that's just, and we dismiss it. I mean, Carl?
It's, we are slowly getting to a place where we are quieting down as a society enough to regard the true soul of community, that is the most sustainable part of society, being its soul, being embodied and resonating through the arts. Voice and music, along with splash and fiber and all that there is to do with the creative spirit.
You talk about voice and music, you spoke earlier about the McCoys and furniture. We look at our great, boat builders, shipwrights and the like. But the people who wrote music to comment on something, my experience has been most of the grandmothers and the great-grandmothers now who used to write short stories, the creative things and poetry. We've lost them. We look at drawings of the sketch artists in the court of how the defendant or the judge or the juror or something is transpiring. But we have those in ours, and as I think of all that, I think of the Ray Banker, for instance, who we're having a chat and there he is capturing what is being said with such emotion, with such realism, that eventually could become $100 million piece, perhaps.
He does. He sells his doodles. So you want to hold on to that next time he comes into Radio Cayman and does that. He does now, and again, I think it's very important if we are really talking about trying to support the arts community. And again, when we say arts and beyond the biennial, music, our writers, our performers, our dramatists, our poets, we have to create an environment where they can actually get funding to do these pursuits. And I think that's maybe what's been missing. Not entirely, we have some great institutions that provide grants and support, but I think the more we value the arts and history and realise that it's these creatives that are often telling the stories of both the current day but also the past, and increase that value, I think then we'll really start to see this formalising more opportunities for young people to get involved and creating an environment where people can actually make a living out of it.
Let's ask a question. And Carl, you may lead the charge, you may not. It's not meant to be offensive. We like to always dance around the elephant in the room. Maybe like Elmer, he decides to camouflage, but it's there. In this emerging society, in this transforming society, how do we ensure that, one, we get to the point like Venice, but we also preserve that those who come from afar and in short order able to have access, that big fish in a small pond mentality, without displacing the genuine healthy respect we should have for things Caymanian. Mr. Brown?
It will remain a challenge. However, because of this sacred part of where we are in our history, where we are now just finding our hands like children in terms of the arts, there is a fevered happy, unbridled spirit towards matters of Caymanian art. So I think that we can rest assured that with the apparatus that's been created through the National Gallery's law, established back in the 1990s, it came at the right time to be able to hold on to some of what was slipping by in the past and hold us to try to capture the accent before it goes a little south, but also be inclusive of the fact and reality of change that is inevitable, and mindful of the fact that the practical Caymanian has always facilitated change because it is expedient to do so economically, but also recognizing that the other part of their life needed to be fulfilled and they're not doing it. So I think we are on that path, and I think we are crafting an instrument that is sustainable enough to be inclusive but not lose the accent.
So, should that art then be a reflection of us, or should it reflect who we are?
I think it's always going to be both. And one of the things that I feel very strongly about is that we can't prescribe what artists should be creating. So I think in a exhibition like the Biennial, half of our artists are looking back and celebrating our history through their work. I go back to this schooner. And again, it doesn't look exactly like a schooner would have done, but it's a young artist's take on her grand maritime history. She is very, very much talking about this critical area, preserving culture, maybe presenting it in a more contemporary way, but very much harking back to this unique Caymanian history. And then next to her, there might be someone doing some street art that's really reflecting the very, very current multicultural Cayman that is now. And I think we need to leave it to our artists, and again, in the wider sense, to be commenting and creating from those viewpoints. What we need to be doing as institutions and governments or the private sector is ensuring that there's enough infrastructure for those creative people to do that. And I think fundamentally, Carl mentioned the National Gallery being established in 1997, the museum 1990, Culture Foundation 1984, and I think those were established in response to this rapid loss of cultural heritage. So it's up to these organisations and not just these institutions, but other types of organisations, Visual Arts Society, Cayman Arts Festival, all these different types of frameworks for creativity to provide enough infrastructure and support that creatives can go away and tell those stories.
So I guess, Carl, in closing, it begs the question, are we prepared to have to manage the narrative in order to ensure that we're setting the agenda?
Yes, and there's another aspect to it, to us. We've always been part of the world around us, and we have secreted around the world. And our next part of who we are as a Caymanian art community is to start re-secreting, because we have secreted before. We had 2 boatyards in Jamaica, one in Roatan, one off the coast of Colombia, one in Nicaragua, and we built the flagship, the official historical flagship of Florida, which is the Western Union schooner. So we have a history of doing that. We just need to re-energize ourselves now that we have our solid foundation here, to also re-secrete, because I must commend Natalie and the trend of where our galleries is heading now, where we are now becoming a part and participating in and being asked to lead in international regional forums and other international forums. So that is allowing our accent, our fingerprint, and our painted fingers to get out there and be counted as significant also. So there's another part of who we are that's emerging, that's going to be another preservative of who we are.
And that really is what the biennial model is all about. This year, it's more of a national exhibition, but it will be a showcase that we can build over time and really bring the international community just to see how good the art in Cayman is. And at the same time, support the development of that, so we really are going places going forward.
A renewed respect, for who we are, and hopefully desire to maintain the truth. Mr. Brown, thank you, sir.
Our cultural village is working.
All right. And Ms. Natalie, equally. I'm looking forward to having more engaged in conversations with you guys as we celebrate it.
We'll come back and talk more about it. It opens on the 9th of February with our members' reception in the evening before. Again, we're always looking for new members, so come down and learn about that if you'd like to join us as well. And the weekend kicks off with various workshops and lectures. Just jump on the National Gallery website, nationalgallery.org.ky, or call 945-8111 and come down and learn about the gallery if you haven't been there yet, and the biennial. Great chance to see 40 local artists on display.
Can't say enough thanks to Radio Cayman for being an important part. In fact, Radio Cayman has been a part of our exhibition space long before we had an official gallery.
Yep.
It had one of the Bendels out here.
No, it had Charles Long, and that's now upstairs. We do have your beautiful mural. It's owned by the National Museum, but they have it on loan at the National Gallery upstairs. In 1975 was the year that was painted.
When you come collect our royalties.
That's why
have to talk to Charles about that.
We refer to you as an important partner and our audience as an important part of stoking our fires. We thank you so much for listening today.
No, man. And you know what? We'll continue this dialogue because it is something that is important to us. And you may think it's just art, but it speaks to...
So you see what I'm saying?
Woo! With that political statement, we invite you... What's tomorrow, Miss Susan? No, okay. Oh, tomorrow is the day... Oh, yeah, it's...
We'll come back anytime.
Yeah,
lots more to share.
That is what it is. It's not Lyrica Carbon. Thank you for joining us. And to our listeners, thank you for being a part of it. If you can be a productive, constructive, informed contributor, you find it is more positive and it's much more beneficial. So live a little, love a lot, and laugh even more. Until tomorrow, be blessed.
Of the Cayman Islands, Radio Cayman.
We love our listeners.
Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.